Right.
And she and I,
And the city deals with a lot of things. And all the things nationally, it seems like they come in here too. Change is what everybody's looking for.
Madam Chair, you are now live.
Good evening, and welcome to our Human Relations Commissions of Asheville Commission meeting. We will start with our land acknowledgement, welcoming members and staff and public. Good evening. I am Chair Alma Atkins, and I would like to welcome you to the November 16th, 2023 Human Relations Commission in-person meeting. We are coming to you live from the Cherokee homelands, where the Eastern Band of Cherokee Indians remain a sovereign nation to this day. We will now call our meeting to order. We'll start with the duties of the Human Relations Commission of Asheville. They include, but are not limited to, make policy recommendations to the City Council which promote and improve human relations and advance equity in the city, support the city's Office of Equity and Inclusion, provide a forum where residents can raise issues and complaints relating to human relations in the city, engage the community regarding the utilization of city-funded programs and policies for the promotion of human relations, and promote and improve human relations and advance equity in the following areas: public safety, education, art and cultural opportunities, economic development, health and human services, and housing. All committee members and staff are participating in person. We are also streaming live on our virtual engagement hub, which is accessible through the virtual engagement hub link on the front page of the city website and also linked on the committee page. We also have an option for public to listen live by phone by dialing 855-925-2801 and entering meeting code 9723. For those of you who plan to speak during the live public comments today, you will need to be present to speak. For those of you out there with us today, welcome. We're now going to have our roll call, and I will now go through and introduce all the commission members, staff, and guests. For our commission members, please make sure to wait until you are recognized by the chair before speaking. When you have a question or would like to speak, raise your hand, and when recognized by the chair, you may speak. Commission members, as I call your name, please say a quick hello, and we'll start with the chair. Hello, I'm Alma Atkins. Good evening. Daniel Young. Harold Dean Harvey.
Here.
Crystal Michelle Reed.
Good evening, present.
Enwayna Smith.
Good evening, I'm here.
Susan Sacco.
Good evening, I'm here.
Candace Blanchard.
Hello, present.
and John Mao.
Good evening.
Good evening. Our city council liaison is Kim Rooney. City staff members are Elena Schmidt, who is our equity and inclusion consultant and staff liaison for the Human Relations Commission of Asheville. Brenda Mills, our equity director. Brad Brammer, our city attorney and legal representative. Good evening. I'd like to go over our group agreements quickly. To give us a shared understanding of group norms and to ensure everyone participating feels heard and valued in the meeting, we will review the group agreement, which we created based on the board and commission's ethics policy. Be civil and courteous. Be respectful of differing opinions. Be present. No personal attacks. Remember the anachronism. Wait, which says, why am I talking or why aren't I talking? Pursue the common ground. Respect and honor the majority decision. Be fair and impartial with votes and discussion, and adhere to the ethics policy. To help our audience follow along, I will state each section of the agenda aloud. Again, I ask committee members to raise your hand and be recognized to speak. Please state your name each time you comment. And just a reminder that the public is listening on the phone, and this keeps them up to date on the order of the meeting and who is commenting or speaking. Acknowledge if there is a quorum for the meeting. There is a quorum. And now we will have the approval of our minutes.
I have a discrepancy with the minutes. It says absent in Wayne, but I was here at the last meeting.
Can we have that added to our agenda from last month?
I can go back and make the revision.
Okay. With that revision, do I have an approval for the September 21st agenda and minutes?
I recommend we accept the September 21st minutes.
Do I have a second?
I second Crystal Reed.
We've had a motion and we've had a second. Now we call for our vote. All in favor for receiving the minutes for September 21st, please raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? The September 21st minutes have been received. And now we're ready for our staff updates.
All right, you have a new member joining us tonight. John Mile is a new member of the Human Relations Commission as of the last City Council appointments. And then we also have an update on the revision to the ordinance establishing the HRCA. You might remember at the September 21st, 2023 HRCA meeting, the Commission voted unanimously to recommend a proposed amendment to the ordinance establishing the HRCA. And that amendment requires that all historically disadvantaged groups will be provided equal access and opportunity to serve on the HRCA. Council voted to revise the ordinance at the October 10th, 2023 City Council meeting. And the Commission will now need to update the rules of procedure for your Commission to reflect that revision. And we'll talk about that later on the agenda.
Thank you. Thank you very much. This brings us to unfinished business. And as you can see on your agenda, we have no unfinished business. So that will take us to the new business. And in our new business, we have a guest presentation. It will be Mr. Dennis Newbern, the Community Development Division Manager for the City of Asheville. And he is presenting on the Community Development Block Grant.
You gotta set me up, I can't see it. Madam Chair, members of the commission, good evening.
Good evening.
My name is Dennis Newberg. Very happy to be here tonight. I am the substitute for Sasha Petrutsky, who's going to be here tonight to talk about affordable housing. So I'm here. And we'll talk about it. And we'll talk about, in particular, I have, I think from the agenda that Elena sent me, I have 4 hours to talk tonight. Oh, okay.
I think that was a typo. That
Okay.
was a
I'll be
typo.
done in 6 minutes, all right? I represent federally funded housing programs, and the city of Asheville has 4 of them.
Mr. Dupert, if you would speak into the
Okay.
microphone, thank you.
Okay. I represent federally funded housing programs, and the city of Asheville has 4 of them. They are the Community Development Block Grant Program, Community Development Block Grant Program Coronavirus, Home Investments Partnership Program, and Home Investments Partnership Program American Recovery Act. These 4 programs represent funding from the United States Department of Housing and Urban Development, and funds are to be used primarily for housing activities as well as activities that will assist the conditions of the neighborhood as well as conditions of life generally. The program I'm going to be talking a little bit about, the most about tonight, is the Community Development Block Grant Program. It's been around since the Housing and Community Development Act of 1974, and the city of Asheville has had this program for several years. Its primary purpose is to provide assistance primarily to low-income persons and families, and there are a variety of ways in which that's been accomplished here in the city of Asheville over the last nearly 50 years. New housing, rehabilitation of existing housing, meals programs, healthcare programs, education and training and job training programs are examples of things that we've funded over the years. And I'm very happy tonight to announce that the application process for this program for fiscal year 24-25 will be open on January 3rd, and it will close on January 26th. There will be, prior to the application opening, there will be 4 separate workshops that will be held, and those will be released and placed on our website and sent around the community, and we'll make sure that you get a copy of that as well. Those workshops will be to explain the mechanics associated with applying for Community Development Block Grant funds, as well as assistance with the software program that we use for applications to be received. I point this out because in the city's attempt to provide more information to the community about things that are going on, this particular program, the Community Development Block Grant Program, is an example of federal dollars that can be used very effectively to increase the supply of affordable housing, can be used to improve the quality of life. Curbs and sidewalks, street improvements, water line replacement, broadband installation are examples of some of the things can be used for the program. We have several nonprofit partners that we work with that provide services ranging from domestic violence to services for homeless persons. So stay tuned about that, and as we get the information out, we'll make certain that you all get it so that you can participate or at least let someone know the availability of funds. Now, I'm going to depart from that a little bit, and I'm going to tell you a little story if I can. And it won't take too terribly long, but it'll be very important. I didn't make enough copies, so I'll kind of talk my way through for those of you in the audience that I'm not able to give a copy of this to. If you would, please, take one and pass it around. While she's passing it around, there has been much discussion across the United States and in this community about the availability of housing. We've even had discussions about the availability of housing and the affordability of housing. Since COVID and prior to COVID, the availability of housing for people who identify as low to moderate income is scarce. It's scarce, period, in Asheville, but for this population, it's especially scarce. And I'd like to point out a few things that will help you to understand that with respect to trying to address the needs of housing, and especially the affordable housing for the clientele that we serve in our federal programs, how difficult it actually is today. On your chart, you will see, and I can't do it without glasses, so I need to put them on, all right? Now, if I could find them, but that requires another pair of glasses. Found them. The United States Department of Housing and Urban Development puts this out every year. And what it is income requirements for all federal programs that are housing related. So this includes public housing as well as community development block grant programs. For Asheville, you'll see there the very one at the top, and then you'll see numbers across, 1 person, 2 persons, so forth and so on, until you get to 8. And then, and I'll use 1 person as an example, you'll see 30% limits. If you have a pencil or paper, I'd like for you to initial that with ELI. ELI stands for extremely low income. These are folks who identify with incomes of 30% of the area median income. These are also the folks that most likely are not going to be able to obtain housing because they cannot afford it based on their incomes. And as you can see all the way across, from a 1-person family of $17,850 to an 8-person family of $33,700, that is a very much a major challenge to be able to seek housing, to secure it, to eat, to thrive and survive. The next category represents the 50% limit, or very low income families. And as you can see, for a 1-income family person, a maximum income of $29,750 is the number. The 60% limits $35,700 all the way across to a family of 8 of $67,320. And the last category, for all federal programs, you have a minimum and a maximum. 80% of area median income, or AMI, represents the maximum you can make. So for a family of 1 person in Asheville for this year, they couldn't make more than $47,600 to qualify for federal assistance. Now, the average family seeking out federal assistance is usually a family of 4. And you can see the numbers for a family of 4 that identifies as ELI. The maximum income is $25,500, going to the high of 80% of $68,000 a year. Now, this is where this stuff gets really, really interesting. For assisted housing programs generally, the standard is you shouldn't pay more than 30% of your gross monthly income in housing expenses. If you do, you are considered to be at risk of becoming homeless. A medical emergency, a loss of a job, a loss of life, a catastrophe, basically puts you in a situation where you could end up homeless. It also means that you have a very difficult time trying to procure housing. Now, part of your function, part of my function, part of our function collectively is to try to figure out ways to increase the supply of housing. In this particular community, we've kind of flatlined with regards to the development of rental housing. So it creates a real challenge for renters, myself included, to even try to find a place to live, because there are very many, and everybody is trying to find a place to live. Now, from a private business perspective, that works very well for landlords. Very well, okay? Because they're able to basically raise rents to reflect what they can get out of the market. So here goes the second chart. Ma'am, if you would, please pass it around. Now, you heard me say a few moments ago, for federally assisted programs, and that includes public housing, the most the tenants or participants in our programs can pay is 30% of their gross monthly income in housing, period. Now, the chart that you have before you represents two different things. The first one represents the FY fiscal year 23-24 fair market rents for Asheville. If you'll note, for an efficiency bedroom unit for FY24, the maximum amount is $1,428. Now, the reason I use the words maximum amount is because if you are fortunate enough to be able to obtain a housing choice voucher, formerly known as Section 8, the most that a Section 8 participant can get would be based upon these numbers here. So if they're seeking, for example, a one-bedroom unit, the most that HUD would subsidize would be $1,496. Seems reasonable initially until what I'm about to say. The average rent in Asheville for a two-bedroom unit right now is $1,935 a month. So what that means is that unless that person who holds that voucher is able actually to find somewhere to live at that rent, they're lucky. Most likely, they're not going to find anything. Why? Because the market at this point, the demand in the market is as such that a landlord can get more money rented on the open market as opposed to participating in assisted housing programs. That causes a real problem for persons who are considered to be low to moderate income. So in the first chart that I gave you, based upon income and family size, it demonstrates that there is a real issue based upon income of trying to find a place to live. Second, it's very difficult to find a place to live based upon the average rents in Asheville. So part of our challenge, our ongoing challenge, is developing products. And if Sasha Bertinsky were here tonight, she would be talking about a couple of the city initiatives that are going on. I'm sure she'll come back at some point in time. From the federal programs, it's very important to understand that we have a very long and proud tradition here of trying to find partners to build affordable housing. Many of the organizations that you're familiar with here, like MHO, for instance, who actually develop affordable housing along with other private developers, have done a good job and helped to the best of their ability to increase the supply of affordable housing. The challenge further goes to the fact that when we can't find housing, there are also higher instances of discrimination associated with folks that are trying to find housing and are shut out, largely because they're not aware of their rights under applicable civil rights laws, or landlords are violated and there's not a mechanism in place to make certain that civil rights laws are enforced. All of those things are very much a part of the very nature of federal programs, and Asheville certainly is not exempt from that. The very idea, the very responsibility from a moral standpoint, from a legal standpoint, of encouraging developers to come into the community and to address the needs of affordable housing is something that we do every day. And in spite of the doom and gloom that I'm sharing with you now, I'm sharing it because many people do not understand the very nature of the fact that affordable housing, while it is something that we are most definitely interested in, it is the market that determines, and it's developers who actually make the decision as to whether or not they want to do it. Affordable housing is very, very, very difficult as opposed to market rate housing. Market rate housing, there are generally no subsidies associated with it. With affordable housing, in order to make it work, to cater to the income levels that we're talking about now, that requires a great many different funding sources. It also requires, there are usually very competitive funding sources too, and many times there are developers that would just prefer to do straight market rate housing. So I would encourage you that during your next term and as we go forward, as you go forward, if there are questions about affordable housing, I would encourage you, one, to go and visit HUD's website, United States Department of Housing and Urban Development, but I would also encourage you to take a look at our website too. Equally important, the application process that I spoke of that's coming up, I would encourage you to make certain that organizations that you're aware of that are interested in developing affordable housing or learning more about it, that they attend, and I would encourage you all as commissioners to do the same thing. The more that you know about the subject, I think the better it is for the community in terms of having an empathetic ear or sympathetic ear, whichever the case may be, to help address this challenge that we have in the community across the United States. I was going to do slides tonight. I can, but then you would really be here for 4 or 5 hours. I'm not going to do that. But at this point, I'll be very happy to entertain any questions. The slides are pretty much self-explanatory. There are 15 of them. But at this point, Madam Chair, if there are any questions that you or the members would like to entertain, I'll be more than happy to answer.
Questions? I recognize Ms. Susan Sacco.
Yes, this is Commissioner Sacco. I have a kind of a question and comment for you. When you talk about affordable housing, it's interesting that we sometimes forget the word accessibility. The reason why I bring that up, probably 3 weeks ago, I was having a discussion with an associate director of what's called Disability Partners. And I know Eva Reynolds has been in charge of that office for a long time. And she had a lengthy discussion with me about the consumers, people with disabilities. Probably the number one calls they receive is there's a lack of affordable, accessible housing. So many of their consumers are people with disabilities, limited income, and they require accessibility. So even on top of not having affordable rental housing, what have you, the issue of accessibility is a huge problem for people with disabilities in Asheville.
You bring up a good point, and I'm going to start right off the bat by saying that is not a subject that we do not forget about. We live here too, and we very much recognize that as part of life, things happen. The inability to use your home, be it a renter or as an owner, is not right. In many cases, it's not legal. As it relates to projects that the city of Asheville is engaged in or fund, it is standard practice for us to make certain that accessibility issues are, and I won't say accessibility issues, rather I'll say accessibility is very much a part of the process because it is a part of civil rights and fair housing. And the flip side is that I think that there needs to be more programs and services for life itself. Things happen. You go to work one day and all of a sudden something catastrophic happens and you can't get in your house, can't use your shower. It just so happens, ma'am, that Habitat for Humanity here in Asheville has a wonderful program that we fund that's available, and there's always, they've been doing it for several years now, and I would encourage any partners or any folks that you know that at least own their home, if they have challenges that require modifications to their home, to get in touch with Habitat for Humanity or call me, and I will help them get to where they need to go. Thank you for bringing that up. And related to that, Madam Chair, I don't know if you currently do this or not, but I would very much like to participate in and fund even an event that addresses exactly what you're talking about. It is a problem in the sense that there are a lot of people that are not aware that there are programs and services that can help. Okay.
That sounds like something very, very interesting that we would like to look into, and we'll come back and discuss those things and pursue it further.
Very good.
Pursue it further. Commissioner Reed.
This is Commissioner Reed. I kind of have a two-part question.
I can't handle those.
Oh, I'm sure you can. I'll make it easy. The first part to this question is about the Community Development Block Grant Program. I guess I should ask the funding, how much funding is allocated for the support of the block grant program for 2024?
So, generally speaking, and one of my nerdy hobbies is the Congress of the United States. And if you've been following what's been going on in the last few months, even the last 30 hours or so, the process is, because we're federally funded, at some point in time, there is an appropriation to HUD to fund all of HUD's programs, including the Community Development Block Grant Program. If the Congress functioned as we're taught in school that they should, there should be a budget on or about September 30th every year, which is the end of the fiscal year. That's not happened in more years than I can care to count. So for organizations like us that rely on those dollars to provide services to the community, we're often in limbo. And limbo last year, last fiscal year, we ended up finding out in March what our allocations were going to be. Now that they're going to, at this point, a two-tiered system to at least keep the government going until later next year, I don't know if that will result in 13 new allocations for the federal agencies, or if it will result in a tiered system or an omnibus where everything is passed all at one time. But to answer your question more specifically, I won't know until a budget or continuing resolution is passed, and then HUD does its budget numbers. Probably will not know at this point, I would say, before late February, early March.
Thank you. I would also like to ask, is the Community Development Block Grant Program accessible to cooperative housing?
So a co-op is owned by the people living in the house. I don't know if they've experienced it here, but let me just kind of answer your question this way. There are times where persons who live in a co-op would qualify for our program and they need assistance with fixing their house up. The short answer is yes, as long as it's owner occupied. Renter occupied, no.
Thank you.
Okay.
Commissioner Lau.
Excuse me, John Mile.
Congratulations on your victory.
Thank you. As a follow-up to the lady's question, and notwithstanding the fact it was March of '23 until you found out what your FY allocation was, what was the total allocation from the federal government for 2023?
1.2 million. I kind of suspect it'll probably be about the same. Don't know. Hope not less.
We'll take one more question and then we'll move on into our agenda for tonight. Well, thank you very much,
You're quite
Mr.
welcome.
Newbern, and we appreciate all that you was able to tell us today. It was very powerful information. Thank you.
In less than 4 hours. Thank you.
Yes,
Thank
it
you.
was. Thank you very much. We appreciate that. Next, we will discuss the proposed revisions to the HRCA Rules of Procedure.
All right, you have this in your handouts or in your meeting materials. To save trees, I only printed the pages of your rules of procedure on which there were proposed revisions. But you do have access to the full PDF of your rules of procedure, which I emailed to you ahead of the meeting. So over the past little over a year or so, there have been a few revisions to the ordinance establishing the HRCA, and your rules of procedure need to be updated to reflect those changes. So this meeting is just for review and discussion only. Per your rules of procedure, any revisions to the rules of procedure have to be presented in a meeting before they can be voted on. So you can vote as early as the January HRCA meeting. The changes that are reflected in this proposed revision reflect the changes to the ordinance from the October 10th City Council meeting, in which the language was added that I gave you in the staff update earlier in the meeting regarding ensuring equal access and opportunity for historically disadvantaged groups. There is a January 10th revision to the ordinance in which your board was reduced from a 15-member board down to 9 members, and with an allowance of up to 3 members from the county who are not residing within city limits. And then this was not an ordinance change because you have the ability to set your own meetings, but your board voted to go down to every other month meetings, so meeting 6 times a year, whereas previously you were meeting 9 times a year. And then the September 13th, 2022 revisions to the ordinance were to remove quotas, which you can see in the rules of procedure is already reflected, but there was one detail that did not get added, which was to add Indigenous people to the list of historically disadvantaged groups. There is a final revision, which is just a tiny typo that I caught, 2 tiny typos that I caught on the next to last page, so page 6 of 7. I removed a space in between O and F of the word of, and there was an extra word in that section 1 paragraph of page 6 in which I am proposing to delete. Does the commission have any questions or discussion regarding these proposed revisions?
Questions? There appear to be no questions.
All right.
Thank you very much. We're now ready for community updates. So we will start with Commissioner Candace for the intergovernment relations. Is there anything to report?
There are no updates.
Commissioner Harvey for community engagement.
At present, nothing to report. It's still a work in progress.
Excuse me, Commissioner Harvey, can you give me just a little more about the work in progress, just to...
Well, mainly there's been no activity at all with the members that are on the subcommittee.
All right. Thank you very much, and we will work on that.
Yes, that's why I said still a work in progress.
Commissioner Reed, addressing housing issues.
If I may allow Commissioner Nuena Smith to lead this.
Yes, you may. Commissioner Smith.
Good evening. I would like to report that Crystal and I are working very hard to make our subcommittee successful. We are joining the city of Asheville, has begun a process of creating a new affordable housing plan with enterprise advisors. And Crystal and I will be on that resident advisory committee. And we will be in the meetings to provide guidance on engagement materials and strategies, connect the project to AHAC, and also connect the community-based, help the advisor to connecting to community-based organizations. And that will help us to reach our goals of examining homelessness and housing supply in Asheville.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Commissioner Seiko, do you have anything to report out about examining systems? Oh, was there a hand?
No, I'll go ahead.
I recognize you, Commissioner.
On the examining systems, Commissioner Sacco and I have gotten together and for this setup on the community projects with, concerning disabilities. We're currently working, Susan's currently working with the deaf and the blind. And it's called Disability Awareness Training. And I've been with Transit for some 6 years. And currently I've been the chairman of that for a year and a half. And at this point, I've been communicating with the general manager and the director of operations. And that's for her and Susan to necessarily get with the drivers, get with staff first, and then, so to speak, if what they come up with, the discussion to formulate ideas, we can move forward as far as Susan and her organization to give the drivers training. And also, Elena reached out to Marcus. She got in touch with him. Haven't heard anything from him. He's the equity trainer, and need to step up my pace on him, seeing where he's at. And Elena also put it on Kate. That's Communications and Public Engagement Department, and they're necessarily responsible for the city's strategic communications and the coordination of public engagement efforts. And Susan, if you had anything else that you wanted to add?
Yes, this is Commissioner Sacco. The little background why this, I had addressed this not only with Commissioner Harold, but also with Elena was, I work for an agency that's called the Division of Services for the Deaf and Hard of Hearing. One of the programs that we do in our outreaching and educating is helping agencies, businesses understand about when you communicate with somebody who has a hearing loss. Now, that could be somebody who's totally deaf, somebody who could be deaf-blind, maybe meaning they have low vision and they can't hear, as well as somebody who's hard of hearing. Probably about 3 months ago, we were successful in doing a training. It's called Effective Communication with the City of Hendersonville. We did their clerks, the staff in their city hall, people who are on the front lines when people come in from the public asking for assistance or have questions. So we did a training with the city hall folks, and they were very impressed. Therefore, they recommended that we do the Hendersonville Fire Department. So there were 3 different days that the fire department went through this training of effective communication. We're waiting right now to hopefully get our foot in the door with the police department. So our goal is to obviously educate, help people understand about hearing loss, how to communicate, what are some do's or don'ts, what's appropriate, what's not appropriate. And living in Asheville, I would love to see the city of Asheville take in charge, and Harvey has set up with the transportation, but I would like to go further and hopefully get city council to make it so that the city offices go through this training. It is free. We accommodate the audience. We've done 30 minutes, we've done to 3 hours, based on, like, if it's a staff meeting, for the fire department, we had to reach out to the different shifts for the firefighters. So, again, it was very successful. It's free, and I have to admit the staff in my office are very good at what they do. So that's a little bit of a history for why I brought this up.
Thank you very much. Commissioner
And
Harris?
adding one other thing to what we're discussing here. It's also a plan on having this, I also have a plan on discussions with the sheriff, chief of police, head of Asheville Fire Department, Because we all need to be effectively communicating with one another. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Examining systems. And then we have no one here today to represent the Improving HRCA. So we'll go to the community announcements. Are there any events or activities that you would like for the Human Relations Commission to make sure that's well known in our different circles?
Yeah.
Yes,
I know.
Commissioner Smith.
I know I'm supposed to do this ahead of time. I'm sorry, Ms. Brenda, but I don't never have time to let everybody know what them is. On Saturday, November the 18th, CPC, the Center Participatory Center, will be hosting their Black Love Remix Party from 3 to 6. There is a Thanksgiving Give Back at Arthur Edenton Center, also on Saturday from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. And then also on Saturday, November the 18th, the 2023 Code Think annual event will also be going on from 6:30 to 7:30 p.m. You can find all these events on Facebook or social media, and I also read them in the Urban Express.
Thank you very much. Anyone else? All right, thank you so very much. Are there any live public comments?
There is no one signed up for comment.
So if there are no live public comments and no further questions, we will consider this meeting adjourned for November the 16th, 2023. Thank you very much.
I should.
And have a good evening.